Alright, hello everyone, I'm Ram Martinez, GFB Chair, and I'm here to talk to you about the 2021 Chart of Accounts and also to take it further to talk about the Contra Accounts and how to align and consolidate. So this is the table of contents in this G slide. So I already actually talked about the GFB survey parts, which is going to be in another video. But I will focus on the first four, which are change of chart of accounts, list of accounts and categories, contra accounts, and how to align and consolidate. So in case that you haven't checked out our other videos already in GFB, so some of the content here is quite similar. But in case that you're still very new to finance, you can look into this. So changing of chart of accounts. So what is the reasons why we're changing the chart of accounts? So the this will help entities to easily identify which accounts suits best. This will this will be more specific and functional friendly, expand our analysis to a deeper level, and collaborative financial inputs. So as you can see, this is like a version of how it changed. So the main changes is actually mainly on the products part, where for ICX we expanded it even further for refunds and returns. Similar for OGX as well, and then the salaries part on GT has been on IGT to has been transferred to a balance sheet account. But let me explain it to you further. For the GFB codes, this is this one, but in terms of explanation, there are four main sections. First section is the unique reference code of GFB. Section B is which group of item it is related to, so it can be exchange. For revenue is it can be exchange, project management, business and business development, internal and entity affiliation fees. So meaning the entity affiliation fees that you receive from LCs if you're an MC, and miscellaneous. Cost is quite similar: exchange, project management, BD, overhead, global fees, which is the payment to AI or RO, internal AAF cost, which is mainly the cost from LCs to MC, and miscellaneous. Assets are cash, long-term assets, receivables internal, which is the receivables that is within the MC and LC of the same entity, long-term receivables and short-term receivables. Liabilities in equity is equity, liabilities internal, long-term liabilities external, and short-term liabilities external. Section C are mainly four parts, so RV or revenue, CO or cost, assets or AS, liabilities and equity or LE. And section D is either if it is for MC or LC category. So that is how the GFB codes are organized. Now, list of accounts and categories. These are, first is the revenue accounts. So revenue accounts explains the income that the entity has generated in a certain period of time. So in AIESEC, we mainly generate revenues from product sales, revenues generated from conferences and entity affiliation fees. But let me explain to you in different categories. So change in revenue accounts. So from old to new accounts. So as I mentioned, from mostly of the ICX side, they had been um, they have been differentiated. Where for IGV partner, it has now partner fee, accommodation fee, refunds and discounts, and others. OGX similarly, but all of these has refunds and discounts. IGT is quite similar, but this is the old version. So in the old version, you cannot have refunds and returns. And then same goes with OGT, IGE, and OGE. But for GTA, IGTA and OGTA, actually also with GTE, you will have partner fee, refunds and returns, discounts, and others, but they are all divided per duration. Then for project management and business development revenues, the main change is just that adding the other projects and events in that are not local volunteer, not conferences or youth speak. Well, for entity affiliation fees, is basically just expanding it to um, to include the new products. And then you got the miscellaneous fees, miscellaneous revenue. Then cost accounts are expenses that your entity has incurred or generate certain expenses. Sorry, that was the wrong word. Um, in RO, in AIESEC we mainly have expenses to operate AIESEC products, pay AI and RO fees, etc. So these are the cost accounts. So the cost accounts are mainly divided into marketing, accommodation, marketing and others. For IGV, it has the accommodation, but also it includes the cost of quality cases. So this includes like ECB case or ICB case that you had lost. Yeah. Then for cost accounts that are for the new products, it mainly has marketing and others. The marketing and others are not divided per duration because you cannot identify it specifically for a duration, but you can identify marketing costs if your specific target is for the specific product. And quality cases, they are divided depending on the duration. So this also applies for GTE. Project management is quite similar as well. There's just an added account for for other types of projects such that are not local volunteer conferences or you speak. For overhead, the main difference is the additional cost of planning and L&D, and also just renaming the coaching and visits. Yeah. So planning and L&D are basically your overhead costs related to planning or other learning and development costs that you might have in your team. And MC global affiliation fees, AI and RO fees. Now for LCs. LC is the only one that has entity affiliation costs because this is the one part where LC pays to the MC. Then MC has now, in the miscellaneous part, there's now the uncollectible accounts cost, which are costs that can be recognized when it is certain that you will not be able to collect receivable from customer, partner, or stakeholders. We will talk more about this later. Assets are simply items that is owned by AIESEC, regarded as having value and available to meet obligations or commitment. Assets are mainly divided into two major types, which are short-term assets and long-term assets. And assets new chart of accounts items are as the following. So a bank account, petty cash, long-term assets, long-term receivables, and short-term receivables. Internal. So internal is just receivables within the entity. Externals are with partners, members, youth, or AIESEC entities outside the entity. So these are all of the asset accounts, as you can see. But there are some changes where we added long-term receivables and short-term receivables for external AI and RO. Yeah. And also we added these accounts, which is short-term receivables, mainly specifically for salaries and accommodation, if in case there is. And another contra account, which is allowance for uncollectible accounts. Yeah. Liabilities is mainly the money owed by AIESEC entity to either externals or internals. So liabilities are divided into two major types. So short-term and long-term liabilities. And also the new chart of accounts is quite similar. There's the internal version and external version as well. Then equity in business means that the net worth of the association. This is mainly based on the formula of assets minus liabilities. So similarly, the main changes is long-term liabilities or short-term liabilities for external AI and RO in case that you you have a debt towards AI or RO. The one earlier, which is a receivable, which is if AI or RO has a debt towards you. Then you had short-term liabilities, specifically for salaries accommodation as well, which are mainly the transfers that happens between the company and the entity. Like let's say if you need to pay the the EP because you had received the money from the company, which is a receivable. Yeah. So just to explain further a little bit on the salaries transfer part. So essentially, if you're going to receive the salaries from the company because of that's how your business is gonna work, so it becomes a receivable and then becomes a cash, then that would be like your liability, and essentially that is a liability towards the EP. So you have to pay that EP, so that will cancel out the liability. Contra accounts. So what is a contra account? This is a general ledger account with a balance that is opposite of the normal balance. For example, revenue is added to the GFB submission sheet in positive values, but for contra accounts will be negative values. So that means the opposite of the normal balance of other accounts. Yeah. Because in the other accounts the normal balance is positive values, but for contra accounts the normal balance is a negative value. So the contra revenue accounts are all of these ones, which are mainly refunds and discounts, while for assets is mainly the uncollectible part. So contra revenue accounts, contra accounts are in revenues are those concerned to refunds and returns and discounts. These accounts cannot be recorded under cost accounts because they were never used as expenses or investments in the first place. All the contra revenue accounts are normally recorded in negative values. So as I mentioned, so in refunds and returns, this is an amount that was received before from an enabler or exchange participant, and now you have used to give them back due to cancellations or other reasons. The amount used to be revenue earned before, but not anymore, thus making a revenue in negative value. So essentially, refunds and returns, these are not cost because technically you are not investing because of cancellation. So you're just returning the revenue that you earned before, but it is not your revenue anymore. So that's why this is a contra account. And let's say assuming that you have a revenue of 5,000, then you need to refund some people of a total of 1,000. So that means the net revenue that you will have is 4,000. But the way you're just going to organize this is that you specifically separate them so that you will know how much is the revenues, the refunds and returns. Similarly, for discounts, this is a deduction of what was supposed to be your revenue from enabler EP, but decided not to collect due to promos, campaigns, or special offers. The amount should be part of the revenue to be earned, but you gave up the right to collect it because it was a decision within the management to put a discount, thus making a revenue in negative value that got cut off from the original value. So it's the same idea as well as the one earlier with the refunds. This is not a cost because you never technically gave them back the money because you didn't collected it in the first place. And contra asset accounts mainly is related to allowance for uncollectible accounts or uncollectible accounts expenses. So this can sometimes be called as allowance for doubtful accounts or allowance for bad debts. This account records the amounts of receivables expected to be collectible. This amount becomes asset in negative values because there is probability you might not be able to collect it. All the contra asset accounts are normally recorded in negative values. So now how to align and consolidate. So in terms of the alignment, it is recommended to adjust the accounting software chart of accounts or create an alignment tool in order to match the new GFB chart of accounts. Following the above steps will allow you to ensure the accuracy of reporting. So in the next slides, let me explain it to you. So how to export data from accounting software. First is that majority of accounting softwares allows their users to export their reports in Excel format. The most crucial reports to be exported from your accounting softwares are income statement and balance sheet. So depending on your software, example of extracting the data from Wave, for instance, is In Wave, there's the reports button, and then you can just choose balance sheet or income statement. After you determine the time period and point in time, you can click the upper right side and select Excel, so you will download the Excel. How to assign GFB account codes. So the chart of accounts has been customized to cover all financial accounts. You as MCVPF has to customize your reality based on the accounts. So also note that for the affiliation fees, there are two types of accounts you normally as MCVPF can choose, like product royalties and fixed affiliation fees. So in this one, this doesn't mean the GFB chart of accounts is to replace your chart of accounts. It just means to just simply assign your the GFB accounts to your account so that you'll know which account matches to your account. So like as mentioned, so from here, so if you listed down all of your entity accounts and the GFB chart of accounts, you will just simply assign, match, and align which entity accounts correspond to the GFB accounts. Next is how to add more accounts to your budget and accounting. If your entity is currently using the old GFB chart of accounts as their current entity chart of accounts, or your entity chart of accounts are missing specific accounts in new GFB chart of accounts, you can follow these steps. Um, where in Wave, you can click accounting and chart of accounts. You can choose the type of account you want, name the account. Just be aware that sometimes Wave doesn't allow to put account numbers. In the budget tracker, adjust by adding more accounts to your tables and add a column in your tracker that has GFB codes. So this is mainly easy. So how to total the amounts based on GFB accounts. So this is like the usual way that you're expected to know how to use the tracker. So the main way to do this is utilizing the GFB codes and using the sum ifs formula. How to reformat the data to follow decimal period. This is usually mainly on the either the settings or doing the find and replace function. The reason for the numerical amounts, we need to use decimal the decimal as periods and not comma, and avoid spaces as a divider for different numbers. So this is crucial because in different formats, with the uh, sheets, it might read as not a number but just a text. So it might not be part of the calculation if you didn't follow the numerical format. In case you are on these entities that follow the commas or spaces, find below a guide of how to submit correctly. So as I mentioned, you can just simply use the find and replace function so that it will be easier. GFB consolidation tool. So there is a GFB consolidation tool that is already part in the chart of accounts. So basically it has MC tabs, entity tabs, and LC tabs that you can utilize further. How to use the consolidation tool is mainly like you make a copy of the tool, you rename the necessary items, and then each tab you can assign each LC for a specific LC tab. Yeah. And and then there's already a consolidation tab that will make it easier for you to copy paste to your submission template as to your submission tool. And yeah, that's it. That's all of it in terms of the chart of accounts, how to align and how to consolidate. And if you have any questions, you can always contact me, GFB chair, or you can contact the team leader for controlling systems. Here are the emails and the WhatsApp numbers below here. So again, thank you so much. Bye bye.